Hey, how's it going? It's Jen here. So when it comes to talking about style here on the internet, I think there are two main approaches. There's the collectivist approach, and then there's the individualist approach. With the collectivist approach, the focus is placed on mainly dressing well. So it's about looking stylish and put together and polished, maybe even admirable, and always appropriate, whether it's according to trends or your body type and essences or your colors, occasion, lifestyle, and maybe even your age. With the individualist approach, the focus is placed on having your own signature style. So it's about using style as a unique identifier and expressing something about yourself through your style, whether it's your love for fashion and different silhouettes, or your personality, or the types of subcultures you're drawn to. And it's always about being true to yourself. Now, I definitely think that the two approaches can overlap. So if we were to draw a Venn diagram, if you buy into the full collectivist approach without overlapping to the other side, then the main goal for you is on looking presentable. So there's little concern for things like individuality, and style is more about fitting into certain standards and figuring out what is deemed correct in your role or context or situation. Now, if you buy into the full individualist approach, the main goal is on self-expression. So in this case, there might be a little concern for looking presentable or appropriate, and you might be anti-trends, dealing with some level of individuality complex, and authenticity is all about being unique and different. Now, I think a lot of us, at least here in the North American or Western society, we probably want to belong somewhere in the middle where the two approaches overlap. We want some level of individuality, and we want to look stylish and appropriate enough. Obviously, I can't speak for everybody, but at least that's the case for me. And why I ask this question, are we confusing dressing well with having a personal style, is because in order for us to achieve that middle ground, I think we need to familiarize ourselves with both approaches. And on the dressing well side of things, there's so much resources available on how to dress oneself well, from talking about proportions or colors, Kibbe and Kitchener, how to discern quality of garments, what's trending this year or next year, etc. And all of these topics, I think, once you learn them, it's easy to follow a set formula. But then there's the uniqueness aspect of style, which is far less straightforward or linear, because there's no set formulas to follow on how exactly to go about expressing yourself. It requires more inner work on figuring out, what do I actually like? What do I want to express through my style? How do I want to express that? Or how much of it should I be expressing, etc. And because deeper self-reflection is naturally more challenging, and style is also inherently an external and visual thing, I just think it's really difficult to translate your introspective thoughts about style, so your so-called vision, into reality. So naturally, I think it's easier to rely more heavily on the dressing well side of things, and then throwing in a dash of your own preferences in there to call it having a personal style. But I think this is where the line between dressing well and actually having a personal style can get really blurred. Because even if you've mastered dressing yourself well, you can still be confused about your style if you don't have a clear vision on what you want to express, or even if you have a clear vision, how to translate that into your actual style. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that you can be perfectly happy with just knowing how to dress yourself well, and maybe the perspective that it shouldn't be that deep is the right way to approach style altogether. I don't really have an answer for that. But if you're anything like me, where you like to mostly live up here and you are trying to figure out what living with a healthy dose of individuality complex looks like, then maybe you might find this helpful. For me, it's not coming up with the vision of what I want my style to be like, both visually and emotionally. Like, that's not the difficult part. The challenging part for me is translating that vision into a style where I don't feel self-conscious about it. And I realized that there are some things that are blocking me from translating my vision into my reality or my style, and maybe you can relate to some of these. So the other day I was watching one of Mark Manson's videos here on YouTube, and he talked about how difficult problems are often very simple to solve, but we tend to make them complex because we just don't want to face them or deal with them. And this got me wondering whether I'm overcomplicating things about my own style because I just don't want to face my own insecurities. Because a simple and easy solution to bringing my stylistic vision into reality is just more trying and practicing. Like, I gotta try on more stuff, I gotta practice putting outfits together, I have to actually wear them for other people to see, or even post them on socials if you have social media. Like, the simple solution to this is just trial and error. But I realized that there are a few things that are preventing me from indulging into more trials and errors. The first of which is expectations versus reality. I think that these days, being able to see how other people dress all around the globe at your fingertips creates such an unrealistic expectation of what things are supposed to look like. And this probably has something to do with the relationship that I have with my own self-image. I mean, I've had my fair share of body image related issues in the past, and how I've tried to deal with it up until now is trying to maintain my current size for as long as I can, so I don't really have to think about or deal with how to dress for my changing body. But as I'm getting older, I'm also realizing that that's becoming harder and harder to achieve. But how are you supposed to try new things and figure out what works and what doesn't when you feel like you don't really like the way you look in anything, right? And I think that's also what's leading more and more people to get more fixated on the dressing well portion of style. Another thing is fear of judgment. I think that the notion that style is frivolous is still very prevalent. I don't necessarily feel it here within our own YouTube community, but in real life, that is still a very real and prevalent idea. So if you're dressed a little bit differently or inappropriately for the occasion or for your age or even for the weather, it will draw attention and not in the way you want. And I feel like it affects me a lot more so than I like to admit to myself. And even though I know that all of this really just stems from wanting to belong, which is such a natural feeling of just being human, I just can't help but feel self-conscious every time that happens. And then there's also different resource constraints, whether it's with time or money or energy. With financials, I've talked about it in one of my recent videos, that there's this feeling that the things that I like are becoming too expensive for my budget. And even though I understand in my head that it's mostly because of marketing gimmicks and consumerism in general that's always leaving us wanting more and more, I can't help but wonder whether how much I'm spending on style and clothes can truly be justified, and whether my priorities are set correctly. And then when it comes to energy constraints, again, I've talked about it in a recent video in relation to the idea of effortlessness, that putting too much effort into style is like getting caught trying too hard, which we're conditioned to think is bad and wrong. And that can relate back to my previous point about fear of judgment. With time constraints, this is a bit of an interesting one for me, because sometimes I do catch myself saying, I just don't have time for style right now. But I'm also a firm believer that if you think it's important enough, you will find the time to do it. So it sort of gives me this like weird peace of mind knowing that maybe style is not as important in my current season of life right now. But it always leaves me with this like mixed sense of comfort as well as anxiety, because I feel like if I don't put in the time and effort into it, then I'm gonna lose my sense of style. And then it's gonna be much harder for me to come back to it later. So those are some of the more deeply rooted causes that I've realized are preventing me from going through more trials and errors when it comes to style, like in trying to bring my stylistic vision to life. And obviously there are no set guidelines or solutions on how to go about overcoming these challenges, because it's going to vary by the individual, but that's just some of my experiences and thoughts which I thought you might be able to relate to. Another firm belief I have is that the only way to maintain consistency in your personal style is through constant auditing and editing of your closet. I've completely let go of my style throughout the pandemic, and it was shocking to see how long it took me to get back into it and feel like myself again. So I think consistency is the only way to not lose your sense of style. But in doing so, it might be more helpful to focus less on the dressing well aspect and focus more on the introspection and vision aspect. So I just wanted to share some of the thoughts that were lingering on my mind recently, and hopefully it gave you some food for thought as well. And as always, I would love to hear more about what you think on this topic, so make sure to leave me a comment before you go. I'll see you in my next video, and until then, stay unique and stay gorgeous.